Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me today. And uh, so this is absolutely my favorite subject ever, which is talking about being inclusive in our solution design. And today I'm going to talk about how that applies to Copilots and Copilot Studio. Um, so a little bit about me. I was born in the US. Now I live in the UK, and I lead the business solutions and AI practice over at Trustmark Ultima. Um, I started my Power Platform journey as a citizen developer, and I loved it so much. I moved in and became a solution architect. And one of the things I've learned in this journey is that it doesn't matter how great your solution is. If people aren't using it, then it's not a successful solution. Um, and then the other really important thing is that I have ADHD, so that it, it it shapes how I experience technology, which is one of the things that really drives my passion in this area of accessibility. So it is, and we'll talk a little bit today about how our design decisions can impact our neurodivergent users. So the first thing I would like to say is that accessibility is actually for everyone. If you have ever been going through train stations, for example, and if you're carrying a bunch of bags with you, you are probably very grateful for those extra wide lanes that you go through that are designed for wheelchair users because it's also going to help you get your luggage through. So when we design to make something accessible for one person, it actually helps all of us. And so I want you to think about it, even if you consider yourself not a disabled person, but have you ever been disabled even just for a moment? Um, I remember the first time I tried to play Pokemon Go and I'm out in the rain and I'm trying to catch Pokemon on my phone and the sun's shining down through this rain. So now I can't see anything on there. The device isn't working right because it's a little bit wet. And I definitely felt then like I didn't have the ability to use my device the way I intended. And the same thing happens if if we're holding a baby or a cup of coffee while we're trying to type a message. If it's really noisy and somebody's talking to you and you're trying to hear them, right? These are all examples of what we call temporary or situational disabilities. And so when we look at some of these, we can see that accessibility impacts us in several different ways. And so we do have the very obvious, very permanent type of disabilities. Like, for instance, if somebody can't see, or if they cannot speak, or they cannot hear, that's clearly a permanent accessibility need that we have. Then we also have temporary accessibility needs. When I first moved to this country, I broke my ankle. I wasn't able to walk. And that definitely presented for me an accessibility challenge until I was healed and able to regain my mobility. And then we have the situational. Um, Again, when I first moved to the UK, I came across a lot of different accents, and it was really difficult for me sometimes, even though we were all speaking English, to understand through somebody's accent what they were saying. And luckily, Microsoft has some built in features like captions, which helped me to get through that. But those were definitely some situational accessibility needs that I found myself. If we don't plan for these at the design stage, it could mean a much higher effort and cost. So if we find something during the design that we say, hey, this is going to possibly be an issue in accessibility, it'll cost us an average, and this is in US dollars because I pinched this slide from Microsoft. It'll cost us an average of $21 in cost and less than 15 minutes to resolve. It gets a little more expensive as we go through the development. We start building it out and we think, ooh, hey, wait, this might not be accessible. We might have to retool the design, go back and fix it. And now it might take us around an hour. If it comes up during the testing bit, now it's a little more expensive. Now we're looking at $318 per issue and maybe 3 to 4 hours to get that remedied and make it accessible. But if we don't find it until we hit production, we have now increased it by 30, right? So $630 to resolve per issue, and it could be a day's of work. So that is why it's so important for us to, from the very, very beginning, think about that user journey and make sure that our solutions are accessible for everybody who's going to be using it and not just our typical user. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the digital noise problem. I think we've all experienced this in one form or another. But when we talk about modern work, our users, we have to navigate through really long emails and corporate announcements, newsletters. Sometimes we might get 4 or 5 newsletters internally per week. And we get these long, long email chains that we get tacked into at the very, very end, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. So now we have to go through to the very beginning. Complex systems and portals. When I first started in the tech industry years and years ago, before Power Platform existed, I remember sometimes to troubleshoot an issue for a client, I might have to access 7 to 10 systems, right? And that can cause a lot of overload. What do I go to for what? When do I use this? Multi-step processes. Um, if I have an expense reimbursement process, for example, where I have to do, 13 different steps to get it accomplished, that can be really, really noisy or challenging rather than a process that might take 1 or 2 clicks. Dense policies and documentation. I think one of my least favorite things is if I ask somebody a question and they'll say it's in the policy, and then I go and pull the policy and it's 150 pages, and I'm like, I'm never going to find this. You know the answer. Can you just tell me what the answer is, right? Hence why we have our retrieval agents that can do that for us. But it can be super overwhelming if we're just pouring through it, trying to find some information. And then, of course, our constant digital notifications. I have been presenting for less than 10 minutes, and I've had 3 notifications that have popped up on my device next to me. And what can happen, particularly for people like me, is that can get super overwhelming. And then ADHD has a unique benefit of just making me blind to the notifications. So I don't even notice them because I have to turn them off and not pay attention. It's distracting me from what I'm trying to do. The result, what I'm describing, is cognitive overload, right? And this isn't just even though my personal experience is coming from one of ADHD, this can impact people with dyslexia, with anxiety, autism, or what we call executive function challenges, where we have a really hard time sometimes using our executive function to get through the day properly. And what we have really found is that most tools are designed for what we call an average user, and that average user actually doesn't exist. It's not a real person because everybody has something that's going to make the technology a little bit easier for them to use and adapt. So I'm going to do a very quick demo. I was smart and decided not to do live demos, so these are pre-recorded. So the first one, I'm going to show you an agent that's built the way many AI assistants are built today. And then I'm going to show you an agent that has been designed intentionally to reduce the cognitive load. And as you watch this demo, I want you to pay attention to how much information the user receives, how the decisions are presented, and how the agent guides the interaction. I'm going to give them the same tasks. So this agent, which I've called the inaccessible travel expense agent, I have asked it to define for me what is the expense policy, right? And now the agent is giving me my response. And I will tell you, if you're like me, I've already turned off. I'm like, what are all these words? It's a small type, it's all jumbled together. I don't really know that I understand what it's trying to do. Let me see if I can define it. Can I expense my lunch? Just tell me, can I expense my lunch? And so now the agent's thinking, and then here it goes again. And it's giving me all of this information in one big block. This, for me, is an example of cognitive overload. There is so much there, and I still don't really understand the answer to my question, right? And this is what happens when we don't give an agent instructions on how to respond to our user. It can just come, big block of text, here you go, this is all you're getting, and technically I did what I was supposed to do. So then I thought, well, let's take this agent, let's make it a little more friendly. Let's see if it can give me some information that I'm able to process better. And so I give you the accessible travel expense agent. And this agent, I ask the same question, right? What is the expense policy? And this agent comes and it's now breaking it down. It's telling me where to start. It's giving me key rules in plain English. And then when I ask it if I can expense my lunch, it's going to perform in a similar manner. So it's basically saying, here's your short answer. No, you really can't. But then it says, here's a little exception that you might want to consider. It tells me what to do next. Go to your expense policy and check it before you submit. Here's some guidelines of when it might be claimable, and here's where it's not claimable. And then it gives me a next step. Tell me what the lunch was for. Were you traveling? Were you at a meeting, at a conference? And I'll tell you how you can submit it. So this agent has taken that same big chunk of information and presented it to me in a very easily digestible manner. And that's the difference when we're talking about what can people use and what the average user is. So what do those design principles look like if we want to build inclusive agents? An inclusive agent design will reduce your cognitive load. So it is really important that you tell your agent how to deliver that answer. Give it very short, give it concise, break it into steps. It depends on the purpose of your agent, right? But we need it to reduce that cognitive load. We want to talk about guiding the user, not overwhelming the user. So that's where the things like, here's what I can do next, or start here, become really helpful. As I said previously, break it into steps. Step one, do this. Step two, do that. Use very simple language. This is not an opportunity to show off the vocabulary of your agent, right? Put it in very, very simple language, in a language that your user is going to understand, by the way. And then always provide a clear next action. Here's all of this. Here's the next thing that you can do. Good AI design is not about more intelligent. It is about that interaction and how people are able to navigate through that AI. So when we design technology for people that struggle the most with our systems, we almost always improve the experience for everyone. It's not about accommodation. It's not about making exceptions, right? It's about removing those unnecessary barriers. So AI agents are giving us a new opportunity to build workplaces that are more supportive, they're less stressful, they're more productive, and they're more inclusive. And this is really important because a lot of times your users aren't going to say, hey, I'm having an issue. This is too much information. What they're going to do is they're just not going to use your tool. So all of that level of effort that you put into making this amazing AI experience for people is now wasted because it's too much. I'm going to share a real example of this using a tool that we've all used before. Um, I was very fortunate last year to be nominated for some awards, and I was directed to a form to fill out like my experiences and what I have done. And I'm telling you, when I opened this up, my brain immediately was overloaded. There were these gigantic text boxes, and I was expected to write 800 words for a total of 4 different questions. The questions weren't clear. And something that's really difficult sometimes for neurodivergent people is we overthink things. So we're like, I mean, technically, did I do that? Or was it more of this? And we can really get ourselves stuck to where we can't move forward because we don't really understand what the ask is, right? Um, and then the concept of writing it all out and having to think of a thoughtful response. And I made a decision because it was so overwhelming. I said, well, I'm just just not going to do this. I'm just not going to compete for this recognition because honestly, it's overloading me and it's too much mental effort for me to get through it. And so and the reason I share that is because if somebody's going to say, I'm not going to try to be acknowledged for my hard work because it's too difficult for me to do this. Why am I going to use a new piece of technology that's replacing a process that I'm very, very familiar with, right? So when we're thinking about how people are going to adopt our agents, we have to keep in mind if it's not easy, clear, and straightforward, they're not going to use it. So I have three things that I would like you to remember from this lightning talk today. Accessibility helps everyone, not just a few people. The second, that we make something more accessible for one person, everybody is going to benefit from that. Even if you do not identify as neurodivergent, ADHD, autistic, anything in that area, I think that you would still appreciate having clear, guided responses from your Copilot agent rather than a big, large block of text that you have to sit through. Deciding accessibility from the start will save you time, it'll save you money, and it'll save you effort. It will save you the rework. And the third, and maybe the most important of all of this, is real people should guide your decisions. So instead of trying to imagine if something is accessible or if it's going to meet a request for accessibility, talk to the real people, the real users that are going to be using it, and get their candid feedback. Allow them to deliver feedback in a way to you that is safe, comfortable, and straightforward to them. So providing different options. Hey, you can give me feedback verbally, via email, you can fill out a form. We have multiple ways for you to give that feedback, but I need to know what a real person thinks about the solution that I've developed. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this lightning presentation today. If you would like to connect on LinkedIn, I've put my QR code up there for you. You can also search for me by my name. I'm always happy to have connection requests. And I do have some additional resources that I could provide to you on my GitHub or answer any further questions for you. So thank you so much. I hope I was close to time on that. I didn't do too bad, right? So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for somebody with ADHD to say, like, you've got this box of time, right? Because you're like, but I could talk about this for 3 hours. I don't know what to do. So yeah, thank you guys so much.
We feel you.
We
And
feel you all, Heather.
Thank you.
yeah, if you don't mind, and if my colleagues don't mind, Heather, I just want to add one of that. If you are using Copilot right now, the issue is mostly the same, right? So it's not only an agent problem or an agent thing, it's always an AI thing. The text coming out of AI are always nicely formatted and they sound incredible and it's so much to read. You can put right now the same instructions that you just had for your agent, you can put them in the custom instructions of your Copilot. So keep that in mind. Every Copilot has a settings pane where you can do some from preferences, some personalization options. You can find it in the Copilot web app, in the app, everywhere, and just put those exact details that you have mentioned there. I have similar things. I just noted that. I was not aware that this is like a inclusive design topic in general, but I just did this intentionally as well. I said, look, I want a precise answer, short answers, no fluffing. Start with the most important thing. If I ask a question, can I do this? I want to have a yes or a no or it depends, and not just like a blah 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 blah. Okay, be
It's
precise.
the blah blah blah, right? You're like, no,
Yeah,
just give me the answer. Just get on with
yeah.
it, right? So
I'm an
yeah,
adult. Okay,
absolutely.
I
Yes,
I I, I can deal with that.
absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. It was really a pleasure.